Well, hello everybody. Get started here in just a minute. Hello, it's me. Welcome to the stream. I'm Ian Douglas. I am the author of TechInterview.guide. We're gonna get started in just a few minutes. We'll let a couple of people wander in. A couple of ground rules as always. We are here to be supportive. We want to be helpful to one another. We want to be kind and encouraging, and we want to include everybody. Everybody gets a voice. Everybody gets an opinion. That's totally okay by my channel. We want to make sure that we're respectful to one another. and offer our advice and perspective in chat. So please feel free to drop questions and comments and opinions, things like that in the chat. I will be paying attention to that as we go. And aside from that, we're going to get started here. So tonight on the stream, what I want to do is I want to focus on two main topics, but I'll also kind of pay attention to questions and chat and kind of relay those as we go. But the two main things I want to go through tonight to get you ready for your job hunt for the week is I want to talk about some of my tips for company research and how that can sort of lead into outreach and networking with people from companies that maybe you don't know or haven't met yet. Maybe other ways to try to find people at companies through your existing connections. So I want to talk about some of that. And then we also had another anonymous resume come in. And so we're going to have a look at that. Although it won't be quite so anonymous. They left their name on it, but they said with permission that that was okay. So thanks for submitting that. If you want a live resume review, you can submit that to me. You just go to techinterview.guide and you'll see a link on there for the streaming. And on the streaming page, you'll see a submission form for sending me a resume. I do prefer that they're anonymized, like change the name to something else, make your phone number, email, and so on. Maybe your location, like anonymize that stuff if you can. We want to make sure that you're not, like publicly doxing yourself out there. So we do want you to be careful about that. And then, just go ahead and send that over, and I'll notify you via email if I'm gonna look at your resume online. Go from there. All right, so let's get this started. Got a couple of people on the channel, so hello. Let's get into, let's see, I think we'll start with the company research. So one of the main things when I do my coaching with folks is they have questions about like, how do I come up with questions to ask people when I'm doing my network and my outreach? How do I come up with questions for them? And this is going to kind of blend into kind of one another as we go through the session tonight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare a spreadsheet, and I'm going to share that on my side. And what we're going to do as part of that spreadsheet is I'm going to show you some of the things that I think about when I go look for a company to work at. And these things may or may not apply to you, and that's okay. I think that having opinions and perspectives on things is totally okay to do. My son's playing the piano. I'm like, where's that other music coming from? I don't know if that's coming through the microphone or not. Hopefully not, but we'll be going here. So let me get a spreadsheet up and running. I'm just going to do new sheet. All right, so let's go through and let me share that screen over here. All right, so I'm just going to call this like company research. And when I post this video on YouTube, I'll post a link to this spreadsheet so you can grab a copy. So if anybody wants a copy of this, you'll see the link in the description on YouTube down below. And then you can make your own copy and modify it however you like. So for the company research, there are, yes, I know, it's safe to drive, thank you. A couple of things that we want to take into consideration here is what kinds of things are important to you when you talk about a company or when you think about a company. What's going to be important to you? What's up, JMO Griff? Good to see you in chat. So for example, do they allow remote work? So this is going to be kind of our criteria. And then over here, we're going to list our companies. Well, actually, we'll just maybe drop some company names in chat for me, and I'll show you how I would look up information about some of them as we go. So maybe in today's age, we want to make sure that they offer remote work. Maybe we want to know where their headquarters is based. Maybe that's important to you. Maybe you want to move closer to headquarters. Maybe you don't want to live close to headquarters. That's totally up to you. But maybe that criteria is important to you. Maybe it's not. Maybe dress code is, how they dress around the office. Are they like a hoodie, ball cap kind of place, like very casual, like t-shirts and shorts and flip-flops, or are they more business casual? Maybe that matters to you. I always promised myself going through college and early in my career that I never ever wanted to work a job where I had to wear a tie. That's just not comfortable for me. And when I code, I need to be comfortable. I need to be kind of relaxed and feeling good. And part of that comes with just wearing comfortable clothes. So maybe dress code's important. Maybe things like work hours. So let's do like flexible hours. Maybe that's important to you. Pet-friendly office. Maybe that's important to you for one reason or another. Maybe you really like having an animal nearby. Maybe you want to be able to bring your pet to the office. But the other thing to consider here, if you've got allergies and you know that their office is pet-friendly, maybe that puts a little more emphasis on, I hope they allow remote work because I can't go into work unless I'm like full of Benadryl. I got 1 cup of water and 1 cup of Benadryl to like keep me going through the day. Like if you've got allergies or something that would keep you away from the office if it was pet friendly, maybe that's good to know. So maybe those kinds of things are important to you. Let's think about company size. So overall company size. Let's change that to lowercase. And then maybe from there, we want to know like the engineering team size. Maybe we want to know like, do they publish diversity stats? Let's see what else. HTTP, a couple of companies. Okay, cool. Thanks for the those things. Jimmy Griff, since you're in chat, share a couple of criteria that would be important to you when you were applying for a job. Like what sorts of things would be important to you? So this list of things might be things that I care about, things that you care about. You can totally modify this list to be whatever you want. You don't have to use my list here at all. What's up, Creature Next? Good to see you. Cool, no problem. I appreciate the compliment, and yeah, we'll see you next stream for sure. Appreciate you dropping by to say hi. See, what are some other things that would be important on the job? Maybe the tech stack. Maybe the tech stack is important. Well, let's break that down. Let's do like programming language, and let's do like framework, and do they do TDD? I mean, for me, that's really important. Do they do TDD? What's up, Coding More? Good to see you. Thanks for dropping by. We're just kind of talking through like different criteria that we would think about as we were applying for jobs. So feel free to drop some other suggestions in here. Overall business model, that's a little vague. We'll get into like what the business does in a moment. But we're just going to start with just some of these criteria to begin with. Let's see, would they pay for relocation? Pay for relocation. What are some other things that might be important to you? Do they offer like parking at the office or like mass transit? What other kinds of perks? Maybe do they do like a gym membership or gym or health wellness kind of perks? Things like that. Jim McGriff is saying in chat, business model in terms of engineering product, to be more specific. So that's a pretty good criteria. Like, is it a product company that has an engineering team, or is engineering the product of the company? Like if it's a SaaS company, like software as a service or platform as a service, or they build an API, things like that, then the engineering kind of drives the company, where you could have more of a product focused company that just, they need a website and they need engineers to like take care of that. And so you're kind of supporting the business versus being the business. But we'll get into that because that's not really the criteria of like a specific job. And I'll talk about the difference with that in a moment. Childcare, okay. Let's look at childcare. Let's see what else. We could do like rental leave. Yeah, anyway, this will get us started at least. So again, these criteria, these are just kind of things that we're coming up with. You can certainly whittle this down to what's important to you. And what you would do in this spreadsheet is you're going to prioritize and say, you know what, like maybe these 3 things right here, the programming language, the framework that they use, and do they do testing? Those are more important to me than whether it's pet friendly. In fact, I don't care whether or not it's pet friendly. Maybe I don't have allergies. Maybe I don't care. So maybe that one's down at the bottom of the list. Maybe I don't care enough about it. I'm just going to take it off the list. Again, this criteria list is totally up to you and it's specific to you. Again, what you care about is going to be different from what I care about. These are just examples for the sake of the stream. But you can certainly put your own criteria on here, and you're going to rearrange them to where the most important things are up top and the less important things are at the bottom. And if you find over time it's like, you know what, I really don't care about this thing, then just take it off the list completely. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add some things down here at the bottom around people. And what I want to look for here is I want to find like the VP of HR, and then I want to find like a director of HR, and then I want to find like senior level like recruiters, and then I'm going to go VP of engineering, maybe a director of engineering, and I'm going to talk about why we want to put names or LinkedIn accounts or something here for these kind of as we go. All right, so these are the criteria that are going to get us started. As we go, I mean, certainly drop questions into chat, drop other ideas into chat. All ideas are welcome. I'm going to go back to kind of my intro page here, just as a quick note here at the beginning, if OBS will behave nicely. Basically, just setting some ground rules for the stream. Like, we're all here to support each other. We're all here to help each other out. We're all here to kind of offer our perspectives and so on. Looks like OBS is being a pain. OBS is being a POS. Come on. All right, maybe it's not going to bother doing that. So if it does, I'll bounce back to the presenting screen. In the meantime, we'll keep going on this. So let's talk about like what a company could be. So Jimigriff gave us a few ideas here. So we have NCAR, Momentum, HTTPie. So what I would do from here is the spreadsheet tab down at the bottom of Google Sheets. What I would do is I would basically rename this after an industry. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to go to rename, and I'm going to call this like SaaS companies. And then what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to click on this down arrow and I'm going to duplicate this so that it duplicates all this criteria for me. And then I'm going to rename this to another industry. Like maybe I'm interested in gaming, so I want to know about some gaming companies. Then I'm going to duplicate this again. And then maybe I care about like environmental things. So let's look for environment focus companies. So Jimmy Griff, you gave me the names of those companies, so NCAR, Momentum, and so on. Can you just drop in chat like what they do, and maybe I can like make a tab specific to that, and we'll look at some of those as we go. So then what I would do from here, so let's look at gaming, and what I'm going to do now is on that tab, I'm actually going to list a company name in each column as we go. So let's do like the big ones like Blizzard, which is technically Activision, I guess. Who does League of Legends? It's Riot Software. And then I worked at a company called Armor Games. Give them a shout out. Great little outfit. A lot of independent game developers there. Chrome plugin developers. Okay, so so for that one, we'll put that under like software as a service kind of thing. So we'll do Momentum under here. So we'll do Momentum. And yeah, I mean, putting like links and contact info and stuff, you know, as some of the criteria in here would be really important as well. Now, there are tools that you can use to sort of track your job application process. And so you can certainly pay attention to those. You can certainly, you know, add like how far you gotten in the stage. You know, have you even applied yet? If you've applied, have you done a phone screen? If you've done a phone screen, have you done on-site? At what point did you get rejected? And those are kind of good statistics to keep track of. Like I said, there are tools out there that'll track that stuff for you. And so you could probably even track some of this in some of those other tools. I like to use Google Spreadsheets. Just it's simple for me, but you can effectively you know, do whatever you like. Oh, now it goes over my other screen. All right, so back to my rules. We're all here to be supportive and helpful and kind. That's how long it took OBS to like unstick and go to the other page. So yeah, please offer advice and perspective as we go. Cool. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go try to find information about Momentum as a company. And then maybe we'll go and try and find some information about these gaming companies as well. So let's start with this. Let's go over to Momentum. And what we want to do is we want to try to fill in as much of this information as we can about the company using various sources. So LinkedIn is going to be a good one. Glassdoor will be a good one. There are other companies that we can look at that will do what's it called? It's they like share their tech stack. My mind just totally went blank. I should have wrote it down. Stack Share. That's what it's called. Stack Share. And this is purely on a voluntary basis by the company. And so you may or may not find a company on here. It may be outdated, but these are probably my top 3. So LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and Stack Share. We're going to try and find a bunch of information about this company called Momentum. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to search for Momentum. And click on companies specifically. And there are a handful of them here. Marketing and advertising. Jay McGriff, I might need your help to narrow down which one of these it is. It's momentum-.com. So momentum-.com is what you dropped in chat. So thanks for that. So it looks like just a lowercase m, your space for focus. Okay. Cool. So I don't know if any of these are that specific company. It's like branding and things like that. So maybe a little tricky to find this particular company on LinkedIn. Momentum for Health, mental health care. Well, let's go back to momentum-.com. Let's see if we can find a little more information about them on here. Weather and more. So they have Twitter. They have a careers page. Let's see what the careers page tells us. Do they have anything about LinkedIn on here? So, I mean, we can see a little bit of information about them. 4 weeks PTO, flexible health spending, wellness spending matching. So that's kind of cool. So some of these we can start filling in. So wellness spending matching. So they will do some kind, so we'll just say that they match on that one. So this is where we can kind of go in and we can start to fill in a little bit of this information. Now, if PTO is important to you and they tell you in the job post or they tell you on the website like how much PTO they give, then maybe that's a criteria in here. So let's change one of these. Let's change like parking and transit. We'll just call this like PTO or something like that. And we see 4 weeks. So the big thing to ask yourself is as you're filling this in for a particular company, this is what you need to ask yourself. Is this okay with me? This is the question you're going to ask yourself over and over and over. If you can find that information, is that okay with you? If you can't find that information, is that okay with you? Because if you can't find information about the company that's really important to you, is it a flag for you that you couldn't find that information or that you couldn't find it easily? Is it buried on the website somewhere? If you can't find it, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean don't apply at that company. But as you're filling this out for these companies and starting to fill in this information, always ask yourself, is this okay with me? Could I find this information? Is that all right? Could I not find it? Is that all right? And if something doesn't sit right, then don't apply. You don't want to take a job just because you need a job. You want to take a job because you can. You take a job because you want to. You don't take a job because you have to. That sets you up for a lot of disappointment, unfortunately. And that can happen quite a bit. I left my first job in California and I'm like, I will literally take any other job. And I threw a bunch of resumes out there. I interviewed and I just took the first offer that I got just because I needed out of that job so badly. But I ended up going to a job with like a massive pay cut, almost a 50% pay cut, no benefits at all, 7 days of PTO, including sick leave. Like it was just awful. My CEO was like micromanaging us. And he didn't think we were working fast enough. So he's like, I'm going to go learn to code on the weekend so I can come in on Monday and help you code. I'm like, what? Like I've been doing this for years and years and years and you're just going to pick it up over the weekend like a hobby? Like not going to happen. So ask yourself, is this okay with me? As you're filling this out, that's something that you're just going to ask yourself over and over. Is this okay with me? So let's go back and take a look at what they're looking for here. Software development. So they're looking for C# and .NET. So we'll start filling these things in. So they're a C# and a .NET kind of shop. Did they mention anything about testing? So tuning SQL queries, stored procedures, performance monitoring, scalability, reliability. So they're probably going to be doing some kind of testing. But I'm just going to search on the page for the word test, and I don't see the word test on here. I'm going to search for TDD on the page. I don't see it here. So it's unknown. So I'm not going to make an assumption. I'm going to leave this blank. So I don't know if they do TDD. So let's go find out where the company is headquartered. Is there like an about us? It's not readily available, like how to find out information about them, but let's go see what's on here. Flexible work hours. That was one of the things on our list. So let's go add that in. So flexible time, flexible hours, yes. Because maybe that's important to you. Maybe you want to work like really, really early morning and get off, you know, sometime early afternoon or something, or you want to start your day later and end in the evening. Like everyone's a little different. So that's okay. So you kind of see where I'm going with this. Like we're trying to find as much information as we can and fill this thing out on here. What I'm not finding on here is any kind of mention about LinkedIn or who the team is. Like if we could find a person's name, let's go look at the blog. Let's see if we can find a name of a person on here. Let's go look at news. Because if we can find a person's name, we can search for them on LinkedIn. Sometimes the blog post will say, this was written by so-and-so. And it doesn't look like they do that either. They just have related posts. So these are all written sort of anonymously. They really don't want you to find out who their people are, which is interesting. It's not the end of the world. They do have a contact page, but it's just a form, so that's not helpful. Help center. Well, let's go look at the Facebook page. Let's see if there's anything on the Facebook page that'll give us what we're looking for here. They're in Victoria, BC, Canada. Okay, so that's something new. They have a help at email address. Just realized I'm logged in and logged in on my actual personal Facebook account here. Page transparency. So again, we can't really find information about them or a person's name, but we do know they're in Canada. So, so what was it, Victoria, BC? So let's go fill that in. So their headquarters was Victoria, BC, Canada. Again, maybe that matters. Maybe you want to go visit Victoria, BC. There's, you know, it's out on Vancouver Island. It's a nice little place. Spent an evening there on a cruise coming back from Alaska. So we know that they're in Canada. So let's change our search for that. I'm not finding it yet. Lots of places all over the place. There's one in Quebec, San Jose, New York, California. So the fact that they're hard to find, for me, would start to raise like, oh, that feels weird that I can't easily find them on LinkedIn. But LinkedIn's not the only source of information. Let's go see if we can find them on Glassdoor. So let's go look for companies. Oh, I got to log in to do anything on Glassdoor. All right. You have an account on Glassdoor. Great. Let's look for momentum. Well, we know it's a Chrome extension, so we know they're also going to be using JavaScript as well, because Chrome extensions are written in JavaScript. We search for momentum. We see a lot of other companies, but I don't see, let's see. It's just a lot of tools and so on. We don't see like the name of a company popping up here. So again, it's starting to feel a little hard to track them down here. But let's go back to their website. Let's go back to their careers page. And they just have an email address. If you want to join their team or if you want to apply, you just email them. So again, it's really hard to like send an application in if we don't know who to address it to, things like that. And that's what these names are for down here. It's like, who are these people? How can I get in touch with them? Who do I address a cover letter to? How do I do any kind of network and outreach if I don't know who the other employees are? So these are criteria that I would be specifically trying to find. So is this okay with me? I mean, right now it's feeling like, I can't find out very much about them for a company that really wants me to join their team, I'm not finding very much about them. So for me, that's a bit of a flag, but that doesn't mean they're not a good company. It's just they're hard to find. So let's see. I mean, maybe they're just a super small company. Not really sure. What was it? Momentum Dash. See if we can find. Nope, nothing under Momentum Dash. Anything under just Momentum Dash? Nope. Let's start the search again here. Momentum Dash. Long Dash. Momentum Dash. Here we go. We have a developer at Momentum Dash. So now we've started to find a little bit of information about them. So now we're looking at this person's profile. What we can do from here is we can click on Momentum Dashboard. And now we found the company. So that took a little bit of digging, but now we found them. And we see 10 employees on LinkedIn. So now we can go back here and we can say, okay, the company size is 10 people. How many of those are in an engineering department of some kind? Well, we can click on that link and we can kind of take kind of a quick peek through here. I'm good at the internet. They're probably a developer, full stack developer. That's 2. Technical lead is 3. Front end developer is 4, 5, 6. Then community manager, business. So 6 of 10 maybe is engineering. So now we don't know this information for sure. This is what we're finding at a glance on LinkedIn, and that's okay so far. But now if you were to reach out to someone at that company, like this person that we found, Sam, for example, if I were to do some kind of cold outreach to them, I could say, hey, I've got some questions about Momentum. If you got some time, I just want to ask about the engineering culture there. I want to ask what your day-to-day is like. If you got time for a couple of quick questions. And if they say yes, great. The questions you're going to ask them are all these gaps on here that you couldn't find information for. Like, hey, I saw on LinkedIn you got 10 employees. Is that right? Is the company that small? Cool. About 6 of them or so on the development team, or, is that, bigger, smaller kind of thing? And you can get confirmation on these and say, cool, well, I couldn't really find very much about like diversity stats. Like, do you, that's something that's really important to me. Do you know if your company publishes that anywhere? If you ever had a blog post about it that I could go take a look at? And you're going to start to develop the questions for that person based on this spreadsheet of what you could find, and more specifically, maybe what you couldn't find, and say, hey, I couldn't really find a lot of information about, like, do you do testing? Like, what sort of test-driven development are you, like, can you even do for a Chrome extension? How would that even work? And you can ask about those kinds of things. Will they pay for relocation? Well, if they're a remote-based company, they probably won't need to relocate you. And so, again, the remote and the relocation may play into each other from there. And the remote and the flexible hours may play together as well, because if they're a remote company, then they're going to have people in all different time zones. And being in different time zones, people are going to be working different hours from one another. So they're more likely to have flexible time. So some things to keep in mind there. So basically what you're going to do from here is, when you're doing that network and outreach, just say, hey, I'm trying to find someone that I can address a cover letter to. Is there, like, do you actually have like an HR team or like a recruiting team, or, is it just like the CEO that's like interviewing everybody? You can find out those answers from those people. And so the thing that you want to do here is, while you're on the call with them, is get the names of these people. If you can't find on LinkedIn, like, I saw a team lead, for example, like front-end developer, technical lead. So, but being a technical lead doesn't necessarily mean they're like a manager or a director kind of level. It looks like they're kind of a small startup. And so it could be that the CTO is interviewing all developers. So you'd say, hey, while I got you on the call, would Jason be the best person to address a cover letter to, or should I address it to Levi? And you can, because it's a small enough company, you're going to address it to a founder. Since it doesn't look like they have an HR team, or they don't have specific recruiters on the the LinkedIn page here, you could say, like, who would I address that to? And now you have a name to put on the cover letter, because you never ever want to write a cover letter that says, to whom it may concern, or dear hiring manager. You want a name. So again, when we go back to this company research spreadsheet, you want to try to find a name of somebody. And the reason that I wrote them in this order is because this is the order that you want to address that cover letter to. If you can't find a VP of HR, you want the director of HR. If you can't find a director of HR, just address it to any senior recruiter. If you can't find anybody on a recruiting team, or HR, or people ops, or whatever they're calling themselves, Then you go to a VP of engineering, not a CTO. If they have a CTO and a VP of engineering, you address it to the VP of engineering. The VP of engineering is in charge of people. The CTO is in charge of the technology at the company. They're chief technology officer. Now, if they're a small startup, CTO does all the development stuff. They're going to do all the hiring on the development side. And so in this case, the CTO would be the person to talk to. And it looks like that person's name was Jason. If you can't find a VP of engineering, the director of engineering would manage people next. And so you kind of go down the list, and whatever the first name is on that list, that's who you're going to address that cover letter to. But you can also confirm that with the person that you're doing the outreach to and say, hey, based on what I'm finding online, looks like Jason might be the best one to, address a cover letter to. Does that sound right? They're going to be honest with you. They're not going to be like, oh, you should totally address it to this other person, and turns out they're like the janitor or something. They're not going to do that. I mean, no one's rightfully going to steer you wrong. If you're legitimately, genuinely trying to work at the company and you're trying to find information about the company, they're going to be honest with you. And so you can generally trust that they're telling you the truth on that kind of thing. Now, if they're a super disgruntled employee, hopefully they'll tell you that as well. But that brings up another point. If you do some kind of network and outreach to the company, and they are a remote company, and you do a call with someone and they're at home, you're way more likely to get honest answers to some of your questions than if they're at an office. If they're in an office, that phone call is probably going to be much shorter, and they're going to be looking over their shoulder, like, is anybody going to hear me if I say an answer to this thing? And so if they are a remote company and people are working from home, you're going to get a lot more honest answers out of them. You can ask them questions like, hey, what do you like about being an engineer there, or developer there? What's great about the team? What don't you like about the team? Is there anything about kind of the workflow of what you do that you don't like? If you could change anything, what would you change? Why haven't you changed it? Maybe they've never been asked that question. Maybe they want to change something and they've never asked to change something. You can certainly ask those kinds of questions. Those are also good questions to ask during the interview as well, but you can certainly ask those as part of the network and outreach at the same time. So same kind of thing. If you're interested in gaming software, for example, I know for a fact that Armor Games is remote. Their programming language, at least when I worked there, it was PHP. PHP, not OHO. And they were on, I think they were on Symfony at the time, but they might have moved off of that framework onto something else, and we did do test-driven development. The headquarters was in Irvine, California. The dress code was very casual. Very much shirt, shorts, and flip-flops kind of place. Flexible hours, within reason, yeah. Company size is really small, though. It's probably less than 6 people right now. It was never really that big to begin with. The core team that was developing the platform was quite small, but then we had dozens and dozens of independent game developers that we would work with to develop games for the platform. And so kind of as you're going through and you're finding out this information, is this okay with me? The fact that I can't find information about diversity stats, is that okay with me? If this is something that's really important to me and it's way up at the top of my list and I can't find that information, maybe that's a flag. Maybe that's something that you need to take into account about whether you even want to apply for that job. So these are the kinds of considerations that you're going to make. And by doing this on a spreadsheet like this, it just makes it super handy to kind of move these things around and determine what's important to you. Maybe salary is important. Salary range could be a big criteria on here as well. Hours in a work week, especially if it's a gaming company, you're going to have really high hours and really low pay because everybody wants to get into game development. It's actually not as lucrative as you might think. You need to be in the industry for a really long time and really prove yourself to make money in the gaming industry. Otherwise, they're going to work you like crazy, 100-hour weeks for $40K a year because everybody wants to do gaming. And if you quit that job, they got someone else to replace you tomorrow. It's not a big deal for them to replace people. And in order to get in on the really big titles and the really big games, you've got to have a proven track record. And if you're new at this, it's going to be really hard to get there. I'm not trying to discourage you from gaming. It's just, it's not a fantastic place as a first job. Armor Games was pretty chill because all the game developers were all just independent, building their little Flash games at the time. But maybe you want to work for a company that's got an environmental focus. Maybe that kind of thing is important to you. So maybe that tab becomes the first tab, because that's the primary focus of the kinds of jobs that you want to go apply to. So this is how I do my research. I fill out a spreadsheet like this and think about what's the criteria that's important to me. How do I rearrange this list for what's important to me? For those that know me, they know that TDD is probably like one of the top things on my list, because I really, really love test-driven development. And maybe that's really important to me. I mean, I worked a job where we didn't do TDD, and I was working ridiculous hours and stressed out like crazy all the time because I never knew whether pushing code to production was going to break things or not. And my code was a very important piece of the overall business. And if my code went down, everything else in the business came to a screeching halt. And so I was always really nervous and really anxious all the time, really wound up. So that's why I love test-driven development now. So again, you're going to rearrange these things into what's important to you. And your criteria is not going to be the same as my criteria. These were just examples for the sake of the stream. You can alter this and change this however you like. I did mention I'm going to put the link to this on YouTube later. It'll be down in the description, but I will drop it in chat for now. Let me make sure that this is viewable by the general interwebs. Anyone, let's see. Anyone with the link can view. There we go. Done. So I'll drop this in. OBS will, no, OBS is not going to allow me. OBS is still on the beach ball. I will drop this in the chat eventually. How's that? And then you can just grab a copy. You can just make yourself a copy. You go to File, make a copy, and then, File, make a copy. You'll just make a copy. It'll copy it over to your own Google Drive. If you don't have a Google account, I mean, you can just emulate and mimic what I've done here. But basically, down here at the bottom, these are going to be industries that are important to you. And so, Jim or Griff, if you're interested in like, companies that build other tools for other developers, then that could be like developer tools as an industry or something like that, or just SaaS companies, software as a service kind of company. So each of the tabs at the bottom are going to be an industry. Each of the companies then are going to have their own column in here, kind of as you go. Now you could highlight them in different colors, based on different status. Like, have I even applied? Have I heard back? Have I done a phone screen? Have I been interviewed? At what point in the process am I? Have I been ghosted? Have I been rejected? Like, write notes in here as well. Track as much of this as you can. Like I mentioned, there are other tools that you can do this kind of stuff with. And maybe you can copy some of this criteria into those other tools. This is just how I do it. But the key thing that I want to get across here is, as you're doing your network and your outreach, you're going to try and fill in the gaps of things that you couldn't find yourself. So again, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, StackShare is also another good one. So for example, if I looked up, what was one of these other companies? HTTP. Let's see if they're in here. They are in here. So now we can go in here and we can take a look at that company, and we'll get an idea of like what kind of tools do they use. Now, again, this is volunteered by the company or by someone that works at the company or worked at the company in the past. And so we could see, okay, Python, JSON, they use curl, whatever REST heart is, and then other alternatives and so on. So you can sometimes get a little bit of information about what kind of technology they use there. Again, that may or may not make a difference to you. I generally tell folks, like, really, please don't get so tied to a technology that you're taking a job because of technology. When I worked at SendGrid, for example, we were writing PHP. Within a year, we were writing more Ruby on Rails. And by the time I left the company, we had completely rewritten the backend in Go and the front end in JavaScript. So over the span of 4 years, we changed our tech stack completely 3 times. And the pipeline that managed all the mail, it started in Perl, it went to Python, it went to Go, and other tools and so on. So don't get so tied to a technology that you're willing to leave a company to go work in that same technology. You might love it. That's okay. It's okay to really like a technology. But if a company is like, oh, you know what, we're going to, let's say you're a Rails developer and they're like, you know what, we decided we're not going to do Rails anymore. You're like, fine, I'm out. See ya. A, it looks a little bit immature on your part. But B, if you're just going to go get another Rails job, then you're not really growing. Like you might go a little bit deeper on Rails, but you're not really going to grow as much as if you change that technology and learn something new about a new language, a new framework, new something. You want to keep progressing in your career, especially in the tech industry. You have to keep learning, you have to keep progressing, or you're going to get really stale really quick. And the next thing you know, it'll be 10 years later, all you know is Rails. You're going to be like a Rails expert at things, but companies more and more, they like generalists and not specific high value, aka high salary expertise. Now, there are places and time for expertise where they say, no, we really need someone to come in and help optimize this one piece. That might lend itself more to a consulting kind of role than a full-time role, because you get that full-time job, you go in and you optimize that one piece, and they're like, okay, well, we don't really need you anymore because you did that. Something to keep in mind there. So don't get so hung up on the technology that you're willing to like leave or take a new job because of a technology change. You got to flow with it. You got to go with it. The deeper you know something, the easier you'll be able to transition into another technology anyway. So just something to keep in mind there. Let's pause there. Any questions in chat? Let's take some questions in chat for a little bit. And I'm going to try and clean up some of these tabs and see if I can drop that link in the chat for you. Looks like I finally can. Is it going to let me post in chat? It is not going to let me post in chat. Why not? Let's try this. Be careful about some echo here. There we go. Let's see if I can drop that in the chat here. There we go. All right, so the link to that spreadsheet is dropped in chat for you now on Twitch. And like I said, when this goes up on YouTube later, I'll put that in the YouTube description as well. So you'll be able to access that file and make your own copy. Again, modify that criteria however you like. And then, do your best to try to find information to fill in what you're looking for about that company and ask yourself, is this okay with me? The fact that you can find that information or not find that information, is that okay? Now, if you can't find it, like I said, it's not a deal breaker. That's where now you've got a list of questions that you can ask the person that you're doing your network and outreach to. Otherwise, when you call or you try to get in touch with them, say, hey, you want to grab a virtual coffee sometime? They're like, cool, what do you want to talk about? They're like, the weather? It's like, well, that's boring. Ask me something about my job. Ask me something about what I do and why I like working there. Ask me some of these questions to fill in your spreadsheet. That's going to be a much more engaging conversation. Cool. Any other questions in chat? We'll pause for a minute and take some questions in here as we go. Hello to everybody. We're up to 10 viewers. Hello. Hope you're all enjoying a tasty beverage. Stay hydrated. I usually have a Dr. Pepper going. I've also got some watermelon LaCroix going lately. It's pretty tasty. Alrighty, well, no questions yet. But yeah, definitely drop questions in there. If you've also got other advice or perspectives, please drop that in chat as well. Always happy. Because what I don't want this stream to be, I don't want this stream just to be my opinions all the time. I want to be here to learn as well. So if you've got thoughts and perspectives, definitely share those in chat as well. Share them with other people. Help me learn too. I've been doing this for 25 years. That doesn't mean I know everything. I'm still constantly learning stuff. And I'm always happy to hear from other people and stuff that they want to do. Alrighty. Cool, I'm just going to change the music here real quick. One thing I'm a little worried about, I think my Spotify was on a different channel. And I'm a little bit worried that YouTube is actually going to pull the video later because it looks like it was playing somebody else's music. So we'll see. I might have to mute the music on the audio playback. Cool, no other questions in chat. All right, well, the other thing I wanted to get to then was a live resume review. And so we had someone submit their resume, and they're actually in the chat as of a few minutes ago. So Jameson, thanks for sending over your resume. If you want a resume review, go to techinterview.guide/streaming. There's a form submission on there that you can send me a copy of your resume. I do generally ask that they get anonymized. So like try to anonymize your phone number and your email address, maybe information like that. just so you're not like putting your information out on the general interwebs. Keep yourself safe around that kind of stuff. In this case, I asked Jameson, like, is it cool? You got your name on there? And they're like, yeah, it's fine. So cool. Thank you for submitting a resume. Depending on how many resumes we get submitted on a weekly basis, I may do 1 or 2 on a Sunday. If I've got some really interesting folks on the show on Thursdays, then I may have them take a peek at a resume as well, or I may call up one of the resumes that we did a review on previous just to get their take as well. I think it's always wise to get a lot of perspectives on what makes a resume good. So we're going to dive in on this resume a little bit. Similar to what we did last week on Thursday, I like to zoom out and kind of look at the overall white space. Like how is the space sort of utilized on the page and how do things kind of line up? And generally this one is looking pretty good. I like the use of color. I would say the first thing I would probably get rid of here though is this Jameson Codes logo up here at the top. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And I do I did take a look at the website as well, and you got that logo on the website too. But I think as far as the resume goes, I would probably nix that. I don't think you need that on there. But your name is a really good size. You got kind of a title in here as well. You got your contact info up here, which is fine. And then your toolkit, you got a good sort of skill set up here, and then your list of projects. We talked about on Thursday kind of this term called above the fold, where I like to see all the really important stuff in this top half of the page. And so, when I'm reading a resume, again, this is just my own bias as someone who screens resumes, I start to read them really slow to try to gauge, like, does this person have the skill I'm looking for this job? And if so, how have they used that skill? And I want that to be like the top half of the page. The bottom half of the page will be like other relevant information, but everything in the top half of that page better tell me that you're the right person for the job. Otherwise, I'm probably not even going to read the bottom half, and I'm just going to move on. So I talked about this a little bit on Thursday's stream. When I'm looking at resumes, I'm looking for a reason to say no. Anything on here that makes me think like something's off, something's weird, I'm just going to say no and move on. I got a lot of these resumes to look through. If I've already gotten to an interview stage with you, I'm looking for a reason to say yes. I'm looking for a reason to hire you at that point. But when I'm screening a resume, I'm looking for a reason to disqualify you. I'm looking for a reason to not look at your resume anymore. So you want to make my life easy. You want to make it really super straightforward. Like, these were the things that you're looking for in that job. Here's how I know those things about that you're looking for in that job. Overall, from a white space perspective, I think it's pretty balanced. There's more white space here on the left side than there is over here on the right side. Like as far as the right column, it's a much thinner column than what we've got over here on the left side. I would probably try to balance that out a little bit, and I might actually try to like bring this in, to about there if possible. Again, it depends on the content that you've got on the page, but it does kind of look like everything is shifted over to the right side of the page a bit more. Not necessarily a bad thing. The other thing you could do would be just to like shorten up this margin a little bit here, just a little bit, like maybe bring in like half of that width or something. So your headings are still like sort of pushed out to the left a little bit compared to the other content on the page. So you could probably just bring all that other content left just a little bit. And so, just figure out whatever that margin is over here and just bring it in a little bit, like half of that width or something like that. As far as the toolkit goes, though, I like that that's sort of like centered on the page, because if it started over here, given the width, it would end about here. And so this would be your sort of skill block. And then you'd end up with this big white space, kind of like blank area over here. So in this case, I actually like the fact that you centered this. One of the things that we talked about on Thursday's stream is how your eye kind of flows across the page. And right now when I'm coming in, the contrast of the yellow on blue, my eye is going to start right here in the middle, and then I'm going to come down this way right away, and I'm going to kind of come straight down the middle of that page. That's how you're kind of drawing my eye down the page, and that's a really good way to do it because of how you've indented things and so on. Now, it is a little text heavy. It starts to feel a little bit heavy kind of around this area here. But we'll dive in on that a little bit. We also talked on Thursday about not letting your bullet points wrap, and at most you want your bullet point to take about 2/3 of the width of the page. So these 2 bullet points here are a really good width. And then you generally want a bit of a buffer over here on this side if possible, because if you're going to put dates like we do here, then you want those dates pushed over on that right margin, and you don't want text going underneath them. So you can kind of isolate those as kind of a pseudo column you'll kind of like visually give that a column of its own. But overall, from a balance point of view of how you've used the page, I think you've done a good job here. So let's dive in a little bit more. We'll zoom back in here and we'll start breaking this down a little bit. I did talk on Thursday. Me personally, I'm not a fan of the vertical bar to separate things. In this case, in the title, it's probably okay. Full stack engineer, comma, system designer. Either way is fine. Getting into system design, it's system singular. So it'd be like system design. And I would take off the er. So I would just say like full stack engineer, comma, system design, not systems designer. I think system design, you'll probably get more hits from an applicant tracking system, just with the words system design. Good contact information up here. I would say if you're going to get rid of the logo over here, I would also get rid of these icons. I know that that's a phone number. I know that that's an email address. And we talked on Thursday, having your location on the resume can subject you to geographic bias. Not always. If you're in this location and you're applying for a job at that location, or you want them to know that you're going to be a remote worker, it's okay to leave it on there. I would just call that out in the cover letter and say like, hey, I'm looking for a remote position. I'm currently in this location, as you can see on my resume. Languages, Ruby, PHP, SQL, SAS, these are all good. Now, again, the order that you put these is the order that I think you're strongest. So kind of the natural inclination when we're looking at resumes, things on the left you know better than the things on the right. And so in this case, it tells me that Jameson knows Ruby really well and barely knows C++. Now, this is a C#.NET shop, and C# is way over here. So if I was applying for that job, I'd be putting C# at the front of the line because they're looking for a C# developer. Now, you may not be great at C#, but that's okay. You don't have to be great at C#, but you do want to list it first on your list of languages. So when I'm looking at that, I go, oh, you know C#. I don't even have to read the rest of the line. I see C#, I'm going to move on. And so, again, because you're kind of drawing my eye down the page right here, if C# is at the beginning of that line, I've already got that data point. Cool, you know C#. Do you know .NET? Well, you say you know C#, but you don't list .NET on here. You're listing Ruby on Rails or WAMP. I would probably, do you spell these out? Most applicant tracking systems aren't going to know that you've done Windows with Apache, with MySQL, and some PHP, Perl, Python kind of variant. So I would probably list those out as separate things. I wouldn't put Windows development on there. If you've configured Apache, then I would leave Apache on there. Otherwise, I would just call out MySQL as a separate database skill. And then the P, if that's your PHP, you've already told me that. In which case, WAMP can just be taken off completely, and you would just add like MySQL or something on the end of the list. GitHub Pages, I would probably take that off. That's not really a skill. It's just, yeah, you know how to host a thing, and that's okay. Jekyll, I would definitely leave that on there. Ruby on Rails, you've already told me Ruby, and I can't write like Python on Rails, so you can take the Ruby on part off and just leave Rails on there as a skill. Paradigms, paradigm feels a little buzzwordy to me. I might call this like methodologies or something like that, and you could list Agile in here as well. But TDD, OOP, functional programming is fine. Other pair programming, sysadmin, IoT, InfoSec, these are all good things to have on here. These all like really stand out, like, oh, InfoSec, that's cool. What about DataSec or DevOpsSec? Those are all like really good keywords to have on there if you're calling those things out. Be prepared to answer questions about them. Anything on your resume is fair game. So I'm going to dive in and like, tell me what you know about info security. Like, what are some common vulnerabilities? How do you protect against those? Tell me about the OWASP top 10. How many of those have you actively worked in the projects that you've got on the page here? How many of those OWASP top 10 things have you actually built onto the page? And I hope that you tell me that you've done some. Otherwise, it kind of calls into question, well, do you really know InfoSec if none of these projects tell me about it? So something to think about there. When we get into the projects, I like that, the name of the project is nice and bold on here. I like that you've called out solo and group work on here. So if they're a remote company, you're telling me like, hey, I can get stuff done alone. I can also work as part of a team. So that all looks really good. This link goes nowhere though. And I don't know if that link got anonymized. but this link just throws me to a 404 page, and this one looks like it was masked to be kind of anonymized, but you know, if you actually hover over it, you can actually see the you know, down here, the very bottom of the page. It actually showed the URL down here at the bottom left. It's actually the same vote.php page, which doesn't go anywhere. So make sure that if you put a link on your resume, make sure it actually goes somewhere. Another thing, just in passing, I like that you've got a live link on here for your little SD shop project. I would probably change the name of it to be like your name dash, you know, Etsy or SD or whatever. Part of me is a little frustrated that Turing like misnamed Etsy shop and called it SD shop. I know they don't want to get sued and stuff like that, and that's why, but it looks like a typo on your resume. And as someone reviewing your resume now, I'm like, was that a typo or is that like something else? So I might actually change the name of this on the resume and just call it like Little Shop, and you know, or Little Shop e-commerce, or you know, pseudo e-commerce site or something like that. You don't actually have to call it Little SD Shop. Now, if you have a GitHub link or whatever, you can link to that, and then they'll see like, oh, you actually meant to call it that. But on a resume, this looks like a typo, and so just be mindful of that. You may want to call it something else on your resume. I like that you call out kind of the user experience on these. Like, what is the project for? Users vote during a project showcase, and employees award the most popular. That's fantastic. You're telling me exactly what the user does on this site, and that's great. And that's the first thing that you're telling me. I love that. And then you're telling me like something fun, like sessions are used to log a user IP to prevent cheating. Great. And then you're giving me kind of the tech stack that you used. So that's fantastic. This looks like the WAMP one that you used, where you got your Windows Server and your MySQL and so on. But again, you're listing MySQL as a skill in your tech stack, but it's not listed up here specifically by name. It is because I know that WAMP includes MySQL, but an applicant tracking system may not. And so as I'm looking through your projects, go, oh, well, you call out MySQL a bunch of times, but you didn't actually call it out as a skill here. So do you really know MySQL? You say you know SQL, but you used MySQL as a database. Like, does that really sort of line up? And so it starts to make me like have questions about your resume. And the more of those, like, even though they're kind of mild questions, the more of those kind of stack up, I'm like, I'm going to think about this one. And if you go on the back burner, you're probably not going to get a call. You might, but I would not chance it myself. I would try not to chance it. But overall, like I said, I really like this user empathy statement up front. Employees gain or grant skill level to lab users to gamify learning new technologies. That's great. These other bullet points, though, don't need to be grammatically correct. And so they don't need to end with a period. I would take the periods off the end of these. And again, try not to let your bullet points wrap across the page. I would try to end all of these lines around the same point. It can go a little bit longer, but so it doesn't look like they all vertically stop at the same point too. But don't let a bullet point wrap on the page. They're not reading that whole thing anyway. I mentioned in another stream, generally when there's a bullet point thing and they're kind of skimming through really quick, they're only picking up 5 or 6 words anyway. So you want those first 5 or 6 words to be like really impactful of like what it was that you did there. But again, this is a C# job. If you list C# at the beginning of the line here, none of these projects include C#. So you tell me that you know C#, but you don't tell me how, and you don't tell me where you've used C# so far on here. And so it does kind of raise the question of like, do you really know C#? Like, do you have any C# project? If so, get it on here. I'm looking for a C# developer. So if you've got any kind of side project that uses C# and .NET, get that on here. Make that the very first project on here. Even if your People's Choice Award is the project you're most proud of yourself, and that's the one that you tell everybody about. If you're applying for my job and I'm looking for C#, that first project better be a C# project. Otherwise, you need to really sell it in the cover letter about how you're going to transfer your knowledge from what you do know about Ruby on Rails to C#.NET, and say, well, Ruby is also an object-oriented programming language. .NET is also an MVC framework like Rails. So I'm going to get up to speed really quickly. I just need to know where the files go. I need to get up to speed on the syntax a little bit, and I'm going to be up and running like in no time. That was my whole life at Turing. I got up to speed really quickly, and I was able to work on technologies. So you have a little more selling to do if you don't list a project that has the technology for that job that you're applying to. It's not impossible to get through and get a phone call. But if I'm looking for a C# developer and C# already way at the end of that list and I don't see any projects that have C#, I'm probably not going to bother with your resume. Cool. Let's move down the page here a little bit. So relevant experience, senior product specialist, UC Denver. Again, not a fan personally of the vertical bar, but that's just me. Here you've got over 2 lines of a bullet point. I would definitely break this up a little bit. I think you could definitely shorten this a little bit or fragment it into like a couple of other bullet points to where maybe you're taking up the same vertical space, but again, you're only going like 2/3 of the width across the page by giving me like multiple bullet points instead. Jamie Griff dropped a question in chat, said, is there a threshold of how complete a project should be when it's listed on a resume to mention a certain tech stack? No, any kind of project that you've done where you've actively built. Now, it doesn't mean like, oh, I started a C# thing and I've got a README file in there and that's it. It doesn't have to be a finished project. But if you've got it deployed, you know, on Heroku or like Azure or something like that, if you're doing like a .NET project, you could deploy on Azure for a really low cost or for free. You can get like 12 months of Azure for free to host some projects. You could just say like work in progress in the GitHub repo. You don't have to tell me that on the resume. So if I'm looking at the project on GitHub, I'd be like, oh, okay, it's not complete, but I can at least go look at some of it, or I can look through the code and kind of see how you structured it. If I'm going all the way to GitHub and looking through your code, that means I'm actually pretty interested in your profile already. And I'm just going to see like how you write your code. What kind of commit history do you have? Do you write a README file? Do you do testing? Like if I'm looking at a resume going, should I call this person? I'm going to do like another sort of check on my own, because maybe HR has given me your resume and they haven't done that due diligence. That's my job as a manager to try to figure out like, do I call you? It's not necessarily just glancing at your resume. If I glance at your resume and go, you made the short list, my next step before I actually call you is to actually go do a little bit more research on you to determine like, yeah, okay, I think you're actually going to be a good person to call or not. Because of the, say, 20 resumes I get from HR, I might boil that down to 10. And then of those 10, I'm going to make phone calls. Maybe I'll get like 3 to 5 to actually interview. And of those, I hope to hire 1, depending on how many people I'm trying to hire for that role. Those would be kind of the ratios that I would do as a hiring manager. I would try to whittle it down to like 10 resumes, try to touch base with them, see if they're still interested, talk about the job, do an initial phone screen, and then try to get 3 to 5 of those into the actual like on-site interview, and then hope to make an offer to 1. Every company's different though. Those are not hard numbers. So that's just how I did my hiring. But overall, these bullet points are pretty wordy. If possible, like try to find something quantifiable with numbers in it. Like I saved X hours, or I improved the efficiency by 18% or something like that. If any of the stuff that you did at UC Denver, could be quantified in that way, get that in here as a bullet point. Because I can guarantee you right now, no one's reading all of this text. This is way too much text. So you got to simplify these bullet points a little bit. Medical writer, again, this is good if the job is looking for something about technical writing. And so if we were to go back and look at what that back-end job was or what the front-end job was, if technical writing is important to them, like documentation or like how-to guides or like instructions on how to use that Chrome plugin that they make, for example, then yeah, technical writing is going to be important to them. But again, I would quantify on here, like how many things did you write? How many pages did you write? Give me some more information about that if possible. It's okay that the name of the place and your title at that job are a little bit bigger than the other font. I think that's fine. The fact that your date is a completely different font and a completely different style and a completely different size looks really out of place though. So I would try to conform those dates to be a little more uniform, and I would try to get those dates over here on that right margin as much as possible, and then make sure that all of your other text stops and you don't have any text going underneath those dates. So I would set your date here, and then I would set this date over here, and then it kind of virtually makes its own little column over here where it's just those dates in that column, because visually then it's a lot easier for me to kind of construct that timeline of when you worked and where. It's not like really crucial that you do that. But again, you're making my life easier by looking at the resume that way. Where right now I've got to like really hunt for it, and when I do find those dates, it's in a different font, and so it looks a little off-putting. And so as much as possible, you want to try to keep the text uniform. Kind of going back to something I said on an earlier stream, I generally coach people to have 3 font sizes. Your name at the top is going to be one font size. These headings are going to be another font size, and all of the other content, all the other stuff up here. So all the stuff up here in the top, up here, and all of this content. Sorry for the yellow on here. For some reason, it's cycling colors on me here. All of the other colors on here are going to be another color or another font size. Sorry. And so I would do like a 10-point font and try to get this to a color here that we can actually see on the screen, because yellow on white is a horrible contrast. For some reason now it doesn't want to do anything at all. All right, I'll try to fix my stylus. But yeah, I would make all of this other text the same size. So just make it all like 10-point font or something like that. But like I said, it's okay that this stuff was a little bit bigger. I think that's fine. And I like that you've got clickable links on these. One thing though that I noticed is this link that you have at the very bottom is not a clickable link. I actually had to copy and paste this into my browser. So if you're putting a link on there, make it a link. Also, not everyone's going to be familiar that .codes is like a new top-level domain, so I might throw like HTTP in front of it, or HTTPS if you got it on a secure site. I would put the protocol in front of that as well, just so that they can visually see that that's a link. The fact that it's more bold than the rest of it, they may hover over it, they may click on it, but again, right now I can't click on it. I can't do anything with that. Little things like that. Having these horizontal lines over here is okay. These two kind of line up here, where this one's like got a good amount of white space after the S. This one's a little bit wider here after the relevant experience. This one's even wider still. But by the time we get down to education, it's on a completely different line. So again, just attention to detail on those kinds of things, or I would take those lines out completely, or put the line like above it or something like that. But again, I think because you've got so much text on here, I think if you shrunk the font size just a tiny bit, you could maybe space these sections out a little bit more and just let white space separate them. You don't need that vertical line or the horizontal line at all. Those would be a couple of suggestions there. Take them or leave them. Like I say all the time, opinions are like armpits. Everybody's got a couple. Some of them stink. You don't ever have to take my advice. But these are just kind of my impressions going through a resume on here. So hopefully that's helpful. What other questions have you got? Let's go to chat for a little bit and see if there are other questions. That's pretty much it for the resume review side of it, unless you've got specific questions about the resume, and certainly other people on the stream, like drop questions in there, drop opinions in there as well. This isn't just me like spouting my input. Jameson's on the chat there. If you've got ideas for Jameson as well, drop those in chat too. And then aside from that, I'm happy to just kind of open it up as far as like job prep for the week. Like maybe we can talk about like how to find people to do network and outreach and things like that. So yeah, I'm happy to kind of just do Q&A for a little bit before we wrap up for the night. So what do you got? Thanks for the compliment on the review. So I did one for Coding More a couple of weeks ago, and it was a lot of fun just going through, and we started that one on Jonan's show. If anybody was on Thursday's stream, we had Jonan Scheffler from New Relic on the stream, and Jonan and I worked together doing a resume review on Thursday. And Coding More is a regular on Jonan's show, and Jonan also did a resume review for him, and they sent me their resume privately and said, hey, could I also get a review from you, and get some feedback from them as well. Question in chat, should dates be included for college attendance, or does it matter? That's a good question. I would say let's stick with consistency on here, because you've got dates for your relevant experience, but you don't give me dates of when you went to school. Generally, you put things in descending date order, and so the newer things are up top and the older things are at the bottom. So that makes me think that you got your bachelor's degree after you went to Turing. If you went to Turing more recently, then I would reverse those. Again, when I'm looking at a resume, I'm looking for what do you know, how have you practiced it, where did you learn it, kind of in that order. And so I would want to see Turing above your bachelor's degree. Putting dates on a resume, some people get a little nervous about it because ageism is a thing. I'm over 40, and that's definitely a criteria that I take into consideration as I'm applying for jobs. Of, am I going to get discriminated against because I'm old? I'm closer to 50 than 40 now. And it is something to take into consideration for sure. So if your bachelor's degree was like way, 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 way long ago, but this is just your relevant experience and it was only like 4 or 5 years ago, but let's say you got your bachelor's degree like a decade ago, I may wonder like, well, what happened in the 5 years from when you got your bachelor's degree to when you got this medical writer job? I may go look at your LinkedIn profile just to see if you had other jobs on there. You've told me this is relevant experience. You could put a little note under here and say something like, I've actually got on my resume for full job experience, go see my LinkedIn profile, because I list every job on there. But I'm not going to put every job on my resume, or my resume is like 3.5 pages long, and no one's going to read all of that. So I list relevant experience and then say for my entire work history, see LinkedIn. I don't see a LinkedIn link on here. I don't see a GitHub link on here. And so it makes it a little trickier for me to see Jameson's other projects or other things about Jameson. And so, whether you want to put a LinkedIn and GitHub profile on here is up to you. You could put links to those under your projects. Again, if you can kind of shrink the font a little bit and make room for it, having a link back to GitHub would be helpful. For example, if we go over to your Heroku app, and it's going to take like 30 seconds to wake up Heroku, so we'll let that sit for a second. If on your Heroku app, if you had a link on there saying like, hey, check out the code, here's a link from Heroku back over to GitHub, now I've got to like hop a bunch of places just to go see the quality of the code that you wrote. So as an engineering manager, me personally, if your resume makes the short list, I want to be able to find your GitHub, because I want to look at how you do commits. I want to see how you've done code reviews. I want to see what kind of teammate you are and how collaborative you've been. I want to see how you've like sort of pitched in on these projects. Like you mentioned, this was a group project, and it served as an extensive exercise in CRUD. But in this case, you actually told me what you were responsible for. So you were responsible for team-wide debugging, implementing invoices, and novel application of bulk discounts. That bulk discount story was actually one of my favorites on when I developed that project back in the day. And most people don't like doing that one because it's a little bit harder. So kudos for doing it. But I would want to see a GitHub link. I want to see where were you actually involved in writing the code? Because it's one thing to do testing and debugging, but that makes me think that you're going to be maybe push more for like a QA kind of role as opposed to like full-time coding. But if you show me a project where you've done a lot of coding and you're responsible for writing lots of actual lines of code, now I get a better idea of what you're like as a developer. So again, those are kind of things going through my mind as I'm looking over a resume. What percentage of job requirements should we meet to apply for a job? Ooh. I mentioned on another stream, historically, white men, a lot of us in tech, we will apply for a job in YOLO and just go apply for that job if we meet like 20 to 25% of the criteria. Women and minorities and historically marginalized groups, they generally won't apply unless they meet like 80% of that list. But keep in mind, when I'm writing that list, that's my Christmas wish list. That's the things I hope I can find a developer that knows all those things. The fact that, or the chance that I actually find somebody that knows that much, really, really minuscule. And chances are pretty good if someone applies and says, I have all of those skills and I've got 3 years experience, I'm probably going to call BS, because you probably don't have proficiency level expertise in all of those things that I'm looking for. You may think you do, but as we get through the interview process, we're going to find that you really don't. And now I call into question everything on your resume. And so it's okay not to have everything on there. Percentage wise, it's hard to like throw out a number and say like apply if you got 40% or apply if you got 60%. I would say just apply. If you think it's a job that you're interested in and it lines up with what you want to do and the company seems okay to you and you've done that company research and you're like, I really like this company, then apply for the job. Just apply. It doesn't matter if you only meet a couple of the criteria, if you don't have the years of experience that they're looking for, apply anyway. As you're doing the network and the outreach and you build up that rapport with the company and you get to know them a little bit, you're going to be able to show them like, hey, I'm really interested in what you do. If you had a side project, for example, that did just a really quick and simple Chrome extension of your own, you could throw that on your resume and go, I like what you do. This is how I'm kind of been tinkering with Chrome extensions too, but I am a backend developer. Here's this C# project that I've been kind of hacking away on. Maybe see if you can like rewrite some of this other stuff. Oh, there's your little Etsy shop. It finally popped up here. See if you can rewrite part of Etsy shop in C# and .NET. Maybe not the whole thing, but you can say like, hey, let's compare the code base. Here's how I wrote this part of the project over here. Here's how I've started rewriting some of it in C# and .NET. I really do have these skills, and you can see how I'm transferring these skills already. And then they're going to go through and they're going to look at this and go, yeah, this thing's totally functional. Like I can totally use this application, and look at all this stuff that I can see and go through and find all these invoices and see how all this stuff is arranged on the page. I can clearly see that you're a Rails developer. And the fact that you start porting that over to .NET just says like, yeah, you're happy to get up to speed. You're happy to work in some other kind of technology. And it shows me that you're really interested in transferring that knowledge to be a good applicant for that job. And then if you can do like a little side project around like a Chrome extension or something like that, again, it just shows me like, oh, you really care about what our company does, not just the tooling that we use, but you actually care about the kinds of things that we're writing and the kinds of things that we're doing. Again, it's telling a better story about you as an applicant. And so the more that you can kind of show that alignment, like, I'm headed in the same direction as all of you at this company. Like, this is why I'm going to be a good fit for this job. It really increases that selling point for them. Cool. I like the peach on white kind of color contrast. I think it's good. Oh, and blue on the bottom. Light blue on dark blue is a little hard to read. Interesting that you got your commit levels on here, or your commit numbers, also in descending order. It shows me that you have a lot more commits on here. Is that the actual GitHub link? Nope, that's going back. Oh, it is your GitHub link. Okay. So I might actually like point that out on that footer bar or something, like here's our project on GitHub or something, or like lock it at the bottom. So as you're scrolling, it's always at the bottom or something like that. It's just a little CSS trick you can do. Cool. But now I can actually go in and I can see like how you actually built this thing out. And I can go look at the collaborators and look at the insights and kind of see like how you built this whole thing out. I also like that you have a forked copy based on someone else's, maybe this is one of your project mates, but I like that the link to this is on your GitHub profile. One thing that always looks a little odd when I look at a resume is people that link to something on GitHub on someone else's GitHub account. And it's like, well, we were teammates. I'm a collaborator on there. It's like, yeah, but you could still fork it and put your forked URL on your resume. So it looks like it's your project. And so I generally tell people like, just if you're on a group project, fork it and put your fork URL on your resume. Don't ever put anybody else's GitHub account on your resume, or I'm more likely to go browse their code and never call you. So keep those kinds of things in mind. But cool. Now we could actually go and look at contributors and commit history and things like that. I can actually see how long ago this was built and so on. And again, I can kind of see all this. Well, one thing that immediately stands out, if we go back to the page, it said you had 80 something commits. According to this, you only had 67. So now that already doesn't line up. So it's like, where did those other 20 odd commits go? It's also funny that Brian is a committer on here, and Tim and Alex. It's all good. Cool. Yeah. So again, it looks a little funny. It's like, oh, well, who is this Brian person that did like most of your code? They added 55,000 lines of code to your project. It's like I click on that and see that they were an instructor. It's like, so your instructor built most of your project? Like, how did that work? So again, it just starts to raise questions about that. So the more upfront and the more clear about that you can be, the better. You can't really like get rid of Brian's code or Tim's code or Alex's code, but that's okay. But just keep in mind, it may raise questions for the people looking through your GitHub to kind of see like how things are going. But again, I would go on here and I would go into code, for example. Let's see, I would look at the commits. So tons of commit history on here. I might go through and actually look at your commit comments in here and see like, fix small something that Heroku may not like. Well, that's not a very descriptive thing. I've actually got to click into this now to find out what it was that you changed. And so generally you want your commit messages to actually say what it was that you fixed or what you changed. But as a hiring manager, I've totally gone in and I've browsed people's commit histories and gone through and looked at other projects that they've built just to kind of get a sense of like, what else are you interested in? I like that this Jameson Codes is like your brand. I like that you're kind of like using those colors everywhere. I think that that's really clever. But like I might go on here and just see like what other kinds of repos do you have that you've forked and that you've originated. Because if I go on here and say, okay, well, you've got how many repositories? You got 38 repositories. But if I come on here and say, how many are you the source of? You've sourced 13. So of 38, you've made 13. That means you've forked 25 other repos. And so now I might come in here and go, okay, well, what have you forked? Because this gives me a little bit of insight into you as a developer. It's like, okay, well, that was your project. You don't really give me a description on this one, but I can also see it was Turing, another Turing thing, symmetric spoon, another Turing thing, Turing, someone else's young waterfall. So again, it's all Ruby. It's all Ruby, 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 Ruby. So it's all the same language. So again, if you want to present yourself as a C# developer, you haven't given me any projects here that show me that you even dabbled in C#. So why is it on your resume? So those would be important things to kind of keep in mind if I'm looking at your actual profile on GitHub. Go to overview. It should give me a language breakdown here somewhere, or it used to. It used to be really easy to see like the different languages that you used on your repos, but it's not really doing that now. Well, actually, you do kind of in the overview up here. If we go back to that page, you do show me here, you got HTML, you got PHP, you got Ruby, and so on. But again, C# doesn't even make, like JavaScript is 0.24%. C# less than that. So again, it would make me question, like, why do you have C# on the resume? If just to get, you know, that keyword on there that I'm going to go, like, I'm going to find you as a C# developer in my applicant tracking system, but then nothing about you looks like a C# developer. It's going to start raising questions of like, do you really know C#? Because there's nothing in your history so far that tells me you know anything about C#. So try to get a project on there. Show me that you're actually learning it, that you've done something with C#, and that'll really sell that. Cool. I like that you're in Englewood, but on your resume you said Hollywood. Cool. So Jameson, appreciate the resume for the live review. Appreciate that very, very much. I like doing these kinds of things live because I think a lot of people can kind of pick up these tips and you know, see what works and what doesn't work. And you know, as far as the branding goes, now that I've seen that brand kind of everywhere, I see it on your GitHub, I see it on your personal website, I see it on your resume. I'm guessing if I go find you on LinkedIn, it's going to be on your LinkedIn profile as well. It's okay. I would leave it. I would leave it on the resume. Most of the time I would say, like, get rid of icons like that. It looks like it's taking up space, but this is your brand. This is who you are. This is how you're presenting yourself, and that's totally okay then. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out. If there are other questions, I'm happy to just hang out and just chat with folks online, even though it's kind of like, you know, I got to wait for you to type your question and I can just answer them. But I'm happy to just take questions in general, or we'll just wrap up for the night. So I'll leave it to chat. And then as far as going from here, it was recommended to me we should always raid another channel. So I've got a channel in mind to go raid that I personally enjoy. But if anybody's got questions or other feedback or things you want to chat about as far as the job hunt for the week ahead, I'm happy to kind of go into that. Let's do that real quick. So let's go back to kind of the company research. Let's find somebody to go talk to at these companies. So we kind of looked at LinkedIn a little bit already. And what was that company called? I did the Chrome extension. It was a SaaS company, Momentum Dashboard. So let's go back there. Let's go to Momentum Dashboard. So one thing that I would typically do is when I'm looking through an employee list is I'm going to try to find a peer level developer that I can talk to. So if you're an entry level dev, try to find another entry level dev. If you're a senior dev, try to find another senior dev and try to ask them like, hey, I'm also at your level, or I have approximately the same years of experience as you do. What's it like for you to work there? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Are you fully remote? Are you kind of hybrid? What's that like for you? How's that been going as far as the company goes and things like that? So you can totally, talk to them about that. If you're an entry level dev, you could maybe connect with the tech lead if you want. They're going to know a lot about more things in the company than, just a single developer. Um, but if you're applying for that back end job, we have a front end developer, we have just developer. So let's go open up their profile. We have tech lead, full stack developer. So we'll go look at theirs. I'm good at the internet, but they don't really say at what. Hopefully more than just checking their email. Let's go see what these other people know. Full stack, so .NET, C#, JavaScript, React, and so on. So definitely one of the backend developers, or they will be doing something about backend on here. This person is also full stack, or they say full stack, but they don't mention anything about their job there other than they've been there for 4 years. So they've been there quite a while. They've been there for just under 2 years. So far I would probably reach out to this person because they've been there a lot longer. Now they're a full stack developer at one company and a director and full stack developer at another company. So that's interesting. Is this their own? Yeah, they're trying to co-found a business while they're also working at this other one. So their interests are already going to be kind of split. I wonder if you would get more interesting answers out of them about like, why are you splitting your time? Like what don't you like about momentum that you can sort of fulfill, in this other role that you're doing? Let's go see what Paul was good at on the internet. Director of operations. So that's not going to be, they're not a developer. So far I've got like 2 peers that I would reach out to for that backend role. And I would be more likely to reach out to Siavish, if I'm pronouncing that even remotely closely, as opposed to Sam. Sam's been there for 2 years, so the person's been there for 4. I would probably reach out to the person that's been there a little bit longer. But you can also look at their overall work history as well. Now we can see they're based in Victoria. They're also based in Victoria, so that starts to raise a question like, are they remote? Would they let you work remote, or are you gonna have to move to Canada? You're gonna have to get a work visa and go work in Canada. So you might have to ask those kinds of questions up front. But if you reach out to this person, you can reach out through LinkedIn and be like, hey, I'm doing some research on momentum. I think it's a job that I would really enjoy. It's a tool that I use. I really appreciate what they're doing. I'd really love to be a part of it. Because as a user, I appreciate this, and I want to be a part of that. So it looks like they were a research assistant. Their education was 2015. So they've only been out of school. I mean, they got a PhD in computer science. So they're a professional student. They spent 12 years in university. And they've been working since 2015. So they've got 6 years experience-ish. This person's got maybe a little more experience. Well, no, about the same actually, 2015. They also graduated with a master's in 2015. So they've both got about 6 years experience. So they're about the same amount of experience. If you're a new dev though, you could still reach out to them. It doesn't look like they have any other like entry level roles, at least not on LinkedIn. But that doesn't necessarily mean they don't have any new developers or like new career, like as far as length of time in their career. So as you reach out, be like, I'm curious about momentum. I'm curious if there are other like more entry level positions or entry level developers on the team that I could talk to about their experience. Because as much as possible, you want to try to find a peer to talk to and say, what was your onboarding like? Do you find you've got enough support? If you're a new dev, you want to find out, do they have a good support structure for you before you even interview? Because you don't want to ask in the interview, what kind of support are you going to give me? As much as possible, you want to find that out before you even apply for the job. And you're going to do that by the network and the outreach. And then other questions that you're going to ask are going to come from this research spreadsheet. Be like, hey, I couldn't find any information about test-driven development. Is that something that your company does? Is that important? Or do you test drive like the most business critical pieces and the rest is kind of like nice to have if we have time to test? But if they're a small startup, they're probably pushing code out the door, and testing is probably not a top priority. But it might be something that's super critical to them, because if they're doing something that's got to be up all the time, then they're probably going to be testing that code and making sure that it's stable. So again, those are questions that you can ask, and then always ask yourself, is this okay with me? As you're finding this information, the fact that I can find this information or not find this information, is that sitting okay with me? You saw the struggle that I had just even trying to find momentum. Like, how do we actually find these folks? What does it actually look like to like go find the companies that we can even start doing that research on them? Took a little bit of effort. So, but if that's a company that you're super interested in, you're going to put in that effort. So what I would say for your job hunt for the week, try to make a copy of the spreadsheet. I've linked it in the Twitch chat, and I'm going to get it on the YouTube description when I post to YouTube later tonight. Make a copy of the spreadsheet. Change up this criteria to what's important to you. Rearrange it to what's most important to you up top and what's less important down at the bottom. And then if you can fill out these things, like who are these people? Now, if you don't know someone at that company, or you're having a hard time making a connection because everybody's like, third degree connection or something like that, I'll give you a little trick. You can find somebody on LinkedIn. I'm going to use Jonan, for example. So if you have a contact on LinkedIn already for any other company, I can say, does Jonan know anybody at Momentum? Well, when you pull up Jonan's profile or my profile or whoever, I'm going to click on this 500 plus connections. So you're going to click on that and you're going to see a list of all of their connections. From here, now when you do a search, it's going to do that search through that person's profile and say, do I know anybody at Momentum Dashboard? No results. Not even a third degree connection, which means Jonan doesn't know anybody that works there. And so as much as possible, you want to try to find, let's see if there are third degree connection. Let's see. Nope. So Jonan doesn't know anybody that knows anybody that works there either. So Jonan's not going to be a path to say like, hey, could you introduce me to somebody? I can't do this through my own profile because I'm logged in, but go through my profile, see if I know somebody that knows somebody that works there, and I'll make an introduction for you if you want. I'm happy to do that from time to time for folks on stream. But that's basically what we can do there. So let's go back to Jonan's profile. Hope Jonan doesn't mind me doing this. So go back to his list of things, and let's go look at one of those other companies that Jay McGriff mentioned, like HTTP Pi or HTT Pi. HTT Pi. So Jonan has second degree connect, or you have a second degree, I have a second degree connection through Jonan at that company. So Jonan knows the founder. So I could say, hey, Jonan, can you make an introduction to that person? If it's a third degree connection, that means Jonan knows somebody that knows someone at that company. And so a second degree connection, those words are hard. If you search through someone's profile and you look for a company, a second degree connection means that the person whose profile you went through, they know somebody at that company and they can make an introduction for you. And so again, if there's a developer experience engineer, so again, depending on the kind of role and kind of experience level that you're looking for, you can be like, hey, Ian or whoever, could you make an introduction to this person at this company for me? And I'll usually answer back and say, what do you want me to say about you? Give me a link, or send me a resume or something that I can pass along as part of an introduction or something like that. And so again, if I was looking for like a senior iOS position, I would say, hey, Jonan, can you make an introduction to Brian Hoke for me? I want to make a connection and do some network and outreach. I'm thinking about applying at that company in the future. Things like that. So utilize your network on LinkedIn. So again, how we did that is we just went to LinkedIn and I just found someone. So let's look at Kathy Keating, for example. She's someone that I hope to have on the show soon. Amazing CTO in Boulder. Well, now she's a CTO advisor, which is pretty cool. She's got a new job. So now I can go through her connection and say, okay, does she know anybody at HTT Pi? Hey, look at that, second degree connections. So if I wanted to talk to the CTO, I would go through Kathy and say, hey, Kathy, can you introduce me to Roger at HTTP Pi? I'm curious about this or that, and I want to make an introduction, and see if they'll make an intro for you. It's the best way to do it. So find someone on LinkedIn that you know that's got lots of connections, and search through their connections for a company. If you see a second degree connection, they know somebody immediately at that company. If you go up to connections and you go to third degree, that means they know somebody who knows somebody at that company. So it's like the degrees of separation kind of thing. But in this case, Kathy actually knows 3 people at that company that she could immediately reach out to on my behalf to make that introduction. So. Cool. All right. Well, I think that's pretty much it. Let's go back to chat. Any tips in particular in virtual meetups? Ooh, that's a good one. Virtual meetups. So this one kind of borders on stalker. So keep that in mind. But if there's somebody that I really want to get to know within a company, so let's go look at that company again real quick. So I'm going to back out of Kathy's profile, and I'm just going to search for HTTP. Maybe what I want to do is I want to see, like, is anybody at this company, does anybody live in Denver? So I'm going to go over to filters, and I'm going to say, does anybody live around, like, Denver, Colorado kind of area? Show results. There's a couple of people that have worked there in the past that live in Denver. Oh, showing results for, oh, it actually split it up. So there's no immediate results for that company. It actually split up the company name, which is disappointing. So nobody at that company seems to be in Denver. But let's say I was, well, actually it doesn't really matter about location anymore. But what you could do, and again, this kind of borders on stalker a little bit, so you do need to use this judiciously. You don't want to like come across creepy. But what I would do is say, okay, well, let's say there's somebody in here that I want to go meet. Let's see, I want to find somebody where their current company is that company. Founders. Wow, there's only 4 people at that company? That doesn't sound right. Is it really that small? All right, so maybe not the best example. Let's see, what could we do? I'm just gonna find an old colleague from SendGrid. Let's do that. So here's my SendGrid. Got lots of folks working here. Let's see, you want to go with SendGrid, click on the company name, click on the employee list. Most SendGrid employees have transitioned their profiles over to Twilio. But just for the sake of doing this, let's go see if we can find a developer of some sort who has not yet changed over here. And I'll show you kind of my principal engineer, Devin Jones. All right, Devin's a great guy. He won't mind me doing this, I hope. Devin, if you're watching, thanks. So what I would do is you could connect through LinkedIn. But one really good way to make a connection for network and outreach is to show somebody that you've got common ground. You've got a common interest of some kind. So what I would do from here is I would maybe go look at Devin's profile and find programming languages that Devin is really interested in. And that, as I recall, he's into Python. Well, let's go find out. See what kind of skills he's got on here. Recommendations, accomplishments, interests. Doesn't list any programming languages. Yep, Python. #1. So let's go find some Python meetups. He's currently in Denver. So let's go to meetup.com. And I'm going to search for Python around Denver, Colorado. This is going to go find Python related meetups. And there's Python August. Well, that's Salt Lake City. Any distance I want to find, like within 50 miles of Denver. There we go. Data science, Colorado data science, Denver learning community, learn to code Colorado. Intro to APIs, Colorado data science. So front range Pythoneers, maybe. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to click on a couple of these names and just kind of see how big the meetup is. Let's see, front range Pythoneers. I want to find out how big. Oh, this one's run by Frank. Frank's amazing. This one's got 1,600 members. So there's a possibility that Devin's going to be part of this group. Let's find out. Let's go to members. We're going to search for Devin in here. Devin M. Devin J. Not the right person. So Devin is not a member of this particular meetup. So let's go to this one. Let's find out how big their group is. 4,000 members. That's much better. Let's go to members. So Devin. Devin H, Devin P. So again, no Devin Jones. So maybe Devin just doesn't go to meetups, but this would be one way that I would try to find people. And if I can find them at a meetup or through meetup.com, I'm going to message them through Meetup and say, hey, I saw that you're part of this. Like, I'm going to join the group and say, hey, I see that you're part of this meetup group. Are you going to the next meetup? Could we, like, you know, if they're doing like a virtual meetup or in-person meetup, could we like connect and have a coffee? Or just, you know, if they're doing like a Zoom based meetup, could we like do a breakout room and just chat for a minute? You know, I got some questions about what it's like to work at SendGrid. If you don't mind answering a couple of questions about, you know, this topic or that topic, and like give them a you know, a couple of things from your company research list. Like, I'm looking to find out information about like the engineering team size and like the ratio of engineers to like rest of company, and maybe some other questions about just day-to-day work there, if you've got some time for that. See if they respond. If you do it through meetup.com, you're showing you've already got that common ground. They may be more likely to answer. Maybe not, but you never know. Or the other thing is, like, if you find them on LinkedIn, see if you can find them on Twitter, message them through Twitter. But I wouldn't do like a ton of them. Like, don't try to message them on every platform. Pick one and try to message them on one platform. Wait a week, see if you get a response. Not everybody checks Twitter all the time. Not everybody checks LinkedIn all the time. Not everybody checks Meetup all the time. If they even have email notifications turned on. But that's one of the things that I like to do when I want to get introduced to somebody, is I'll try to see if I've got common ground through a meetup. Now, if they're in a different location than you, then you're going to find a meetup in their area. So if they're based in Seattle, I'm going to go look for meetups in Seattle around Python, see if they're in any Seattle area meetups. And then I may join that meetup anyway and you know, say, oh, hey, I noticed you're part of this meetup. I'm actually based in Denver, but I was really interested in this topic that's coming up. Are you going to be at that next talk? If so, like, could we connect virtually? Now, if it's an in-person meetup, then that's not going to work out to like physically meet in person unless you happen to be out in Seattle. But that's one way to potentially connect. Is just try to find some kind of common ground and common platform and message them through that other platform. It's totally okay to message people and do that network and outreach through LinkedIn, but doing it through an alternate platform shows like, hey, we're already kind of like, we got kind of that alignment that we talked about earlier. Not to be buzzwordy about it, but just say like, hey, you know, I notice you're also interested in this topic. I'm also interested in that topic. I noticed you happen to work at SendGrid. I got some questions about working there. Do you have some time to answer some questions? You may get an answer, you might not. And if not, don't message them on that platform anymore. Wait a week or two and then try to reach out on LinkedIn and say like, oh, hey, I noticed you're also on LinkedIn. Just want to connect, let you know I'm still interested in having that chat sometime if you got time for a Zoom call or, you know, Google Meet or something along those lines. So cool. Hopefully those tips are helpful. Aside from that, I think I'm going to wrap up the stream. We're going on almost 2 hours. So I think I'll wrap up here since there were no other questions on the chat. But I appreciate everybody hanging out for a little bit. Appreciate the questions. Again, thanks to Jameson for the resume review. Send me over more resumes. Even if it's just a resume that you've already sent out, maybe you've already got a job, but you just want like some feedback, or you just want to give me a resume that I can kind of like pick apart a little bit on the stream. I'd appreciate that as well. So again, you can just go to techinterview.guide/streaming and you'll see a submission form on there to send me over a PDF. PDF for humans, Word document for applicant tracking systems. So when you're actually applying for a job, get it in Word doc format and send that over. But if you're sending it to a human, give them a PDF. It'll be a lot easier to read and parse and so on. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out, everybody. We'll see you next time. Follow on Twitch, follow on Twitter, subscribe, like, all that stuff. I'm not really into the monetization, but it'll let you know when I'm going live. I try to kind of send alerts out on LinkedIn and Twitter and so on when I'm going live, but it'll be every Sunday, every Thursday, 7 p.m. Mountain, Should be 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern time in North America. Appreciate everybody hanging out. Drop a line anytime. You can reach me at ian.douglas@techinterview.guide if you want to email me. It's just ian.douglas at the domain name. I've also got the free daily email subscription on there that you can check out. It's 6 weeks long. I'm about to split that into 2 different lists. One's going to be technical, one's going to be behavioral. And then I'm also gearing up to do a 3rd list at some point where I'm going to start breaking down tech interview challenges. And I'm going to go over that in a stream in the future, probably on a Sunday night, where we're going to talk about like tech challenges and how to kind of identify them and how to come up with strategies for working through tech challenges. So we'll see that on a stream in the future. Aside from that, have a great night. Have a great week. If you got questions about job hunt stuff, please email me. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch. I'm Ian Douglas 736. I got it. You can see it kind of at the bottom of my my little window on the stream. But reach out to me. I'm happy to help and give out advice. So let me know if I can help you out. And have a great week, everyone. Thanks for coming by. Now I gotta wait for OBS to like stop doing the beach ball thing so I can actually stop the stream.